value to make them worth gathering. It's not just birds either. Field mice, voles, and harvest mice climb autumn hedges for the last of the blackberries. Probably the next best-known saying after Red Sky at Night has to do with berries. Hips and haws and hollyberries are supposed to provide a wealth of food for the birds as a sign of a hard winter to come. Nature looks after her own and all that. One hates to throw cold water on the idea, especially at this time of year, but it's just not true. The number of berries on the bushes is simply a sign that it's been a good, productive summer. A hard winter sometimes follows a good summer, but there's no guarantee of it. After a poor fruiting season, a severe winter will kill half the small bird population, maybe more. Large birds, stronger on the wing, can move to escape the worst of the weather. In Spain, they call the lapwing ave fria, the cold bird, because it appears only when the severest weather has driven it out of more northerly countries, such as Britain. For the smaller fry, which can't keep out of the dangers of winter, human activities provide a lifeline. Fortunately for sparrows and finches, sheep are not very possessive about their winter rations. There's no cheese here, whether the yellowhammer wants it or not. No little bit of bread either. If nature does look after her own, it's by pitilessly thinning out the population until only the toughest can survive. The birds call a truce in winter, forgetting the territorial disputes of spring and summer in a joint search for whatever might keep them going. Their diets converge as well. Larks normally eat insects, but in the snow they have to be prepared to share seeds with the chaffinches. At this time of year, the birds aren't predicting anything. They're reacting to the conditions. It's not much help to know that small birds gather to feed in mixed flocks during hard winter weather. Shivering humanity can judge the weather for itself without consulting the birds. Incidentally, birds look tubby in winter because they have all their body feathers fluffed out to keep warm, not because they're well fed. Most of the time, they're permanently hungry. They can't forecast their next bite of food, never mind the weather. The blue tit is a special case, not because people predict the weather from its activities, but because it has to predict the weather for itself, if its daring breeding strategy is to succeed. Of all our well-loved garden birds, the blue tit has the biggest stake in guessing accurately when spring will arrive. Blue tits begin nesting before the appearance of the main food supply for their chicks. For them, it's crucial to predict the hatching time of the caterpillars of the winter moth and the feathered thorn moth, among others. Furthermore, they must make their guess a month in advance. The investment is enormous. Gathering nesting material, in this case the fur from a dead rabbit, takes time and energy at a season when food is not readily available. Yet, by the time the chicks have hatched a month later, there are caterpillars everywhere. How do the tits get it right year after year? Could we predict the arrival of spring more accurately if we understood? The answer is yes, we could, but only if we could search the trees and bushes as closely as blue tits do. The evidence now suggests that the secret lies in the bird's courtship behavior, in which the male finds what early insects he can to give to the female. She digests his offerings until she's well enough fed to start producing eggs. By then, the whole insect population is recovering from winter. The moths have laid their eggs, and the caterpillars appear on cue in time for the chicks to eat them. Sometimes, it seems, even the voracious chicks have had enough caterpillars. Blue tits aren't the only animals which seem to have an uncanny knack of predicting the change of the seasons. In their case, if scientists are right, it's not a magical sixth sense, but a matter of being able to gear themselves into the natural cycle by responding to cues such as the emergence of the earliest insects. A particularly damp spring or a succession of cold days can make food too hard to find and cause the first brood of chicks to starve. The tits don't always get it right. If the first attempt fails, they'll try again when the season is properly established. In Africa, where the long-awaited season is not the warm weather, but the coming of the rains, the best weather forecaster is the Bubu shrike. Just before the rains appear, the dusty bush begins to ring with its call. Sure enough, the rains follow, or so a lot of people say. Others watch the behavior of safari ants or listen for the call of the cuckoo. Everyone in Africa longs for rain, and optimists will snatch at almost anything as the first sign of relief from drought. Among animals which must have water to survive, waiting for the rains is not enough. Wildebeest follow the path of the rain clouds, not for the water itself, though that's vital in its own way, but for the fresh grass which springs up after the first rain has fallen. In their migrations, they're not predicting the weather, but following it, literally chasing the thunderclouds on the horizon. It's not clear whether they smell the rain from far away, or hear the thunder, or simply see the clouds in the distance. But what is immediately apparent is the urgency of their need to be where rain is falling. Hundreds of thousands of wildebeest move off the Serengeti Plains and back again every year, a living weather map, charting the rainfall with their hooves. Further north, white-eared kob in the Sudan migrate over a route which carries them 1,000 miles every year. First, they move north to eat the grass exposed by the receding waters of the Nile floodplain. There's nothing meteorological in that, but afterwards they have to move south again across the now dry and inhospitable plain in search of fresh grass. Presumably, the instinct to move to the south is bred into the herd, but the location of individual rainstorms is impossible to predict. Whether they find them by sound or sight or scent, the herd moves as one towards the rain. Many of them die during this parched progress. To a cob, the observation of weather is a matter of life and death. They have been known to make fruitless round trips of 200 miles following a cloud which failed to disgorge its promised rainfall. When they finally meet the advancing rains, they are a weary and undernourished group indeed. If the rains fail or come late, and they're sometimes very late, cob will die by the thousand. Later, in the far south, their problem will be too much water, not too little. But that's another story. Other migrants follow climatic changes. Some, like barnacle geese, move north to take advantage of the very short but abundant Arctic summer. Their movement has to be precisely timed. To human observers, it means that spring is at last on the way. The way in which the geese time their departure is still not clear, but there is a pronounced shift in the pattern of high and low pressure over Europe from winter to spring, and it's just possible that the birds can detect its effects, sensitized as they are by the increasing length of daylight. The geese leave Scotland in early April, at about the same time as storks are returning to Europe from their winter quarters in South Africa. At this time of year, millions of birds of all sorts, shapes and sizes are moving up and down the globe. And in each country in the Northern Hemisphere, one species or another is being welcomed as the herald of spring. In Germany, the return of the storks is an occasion for celebration, not least because they're survivors of a dwindling band. As weather prophets, the storks are very accurate. They move north with the European anticyclone, soaring round the eastern shore of the Mediterranean, propelled by the huge flow of warm air from the south. This air mass is, in a very real sense, the summer itself, and the storks come in on its leading edge. There may well be showers or patches of cool air within the summer airflow, but once the weather pattern has started to change from winter to summer, it will keep on. One swallow, or two storks for that matter, might not make a summer, but it's a sign that summer's not far away. Many people say that the best weather forecaster is the calendar. In terms of the average air temperature from season to season, that's true. From day to day in this country, it's a nonsense. Crocuses flower on about the same date every year, come snow or shine. They survive because at or around that date, the air temperature will almost certainly be suitable, even if on the day they first open, it's a little chilly. Whether we recognize it or not, spring arrives more or less on cue each year. What we in Britain have to accept is that our little offshore islands have a climate which can be relied on, but weather which can't. That's probably why we have a worldwide reputation for talking about the weather, and furthermore,